So when the butcher spotted at me, I honestly thought I was dead. 100%, I thought I was going to die. And I got OBS open as quickly as I could and started recording so that, you know, in the event that I did kill him, I would be able to show y'all. And I did end up killing him. This build is that fucking sick. Check this out.
Oh, come the fuck on. Go. This build is able to just wreck the butcher whenever he so out levels me. What the fuck?
Alright, so let's go over the build I used to kill the butcher at 67 in World Tier 4, just face tanking him on a Necromancer. That's supposed to be one of the squishier classes that just kind of falls over dead, right? And mind you, I don't have a lot of life on this character, but this build has a lot of survivability and a lot of cooldown reduction to keep your survivability going. Let's hop into it and see what we get. All right, so first aspect, Blight AoE grip. This is for clearing trash and everything. It pulls everything into a nice little cluster and keeps them slowed because that's what Blight does, right? I've got the razor plate for the thorns. It's just a good quality of life and free damage. They hit you, they take damage. It's just nice. Gloves, I got this one for the corpse explosion where it spawns the little skelly dudes and they run at random mobs and explode the blight puddles on them. I guess they're technically not blight puddles, but they kind of look like it. It's miasma, whatever. Don't hate me in the comments for calling it a blight puddle, but it is what it is. This is so that you don't die. 50%, I got lucky on this drop. 50% increased armor for 4 seconds when you deal any form of damage. So as long as you keep doing damage at least once every 4 seconds, you can keep it at 50% the entire time. These ones don't actually get used in the build. I'm not using Sever at all. But what they do is they're better than any other boots I had. Most of the boots I had were from my minion build. So it was either plus skeletal mages, plus skeletal warriors, and I had other ones that were just for like blood builds that I haven't actually made yet, and there was nothing that was actually pertaining to this build on my boots, so I decided to just go with these ones because they do give me lucky hit chance with shadow damage, which is nice, and damage reduction from enemies that are affected by shadow damage. It helps the survivability. I get 2 additional evade charges, the 25 intelligence. It actually just works out really well for me. This one, 99% increased damage for 6 seconds after the Shadow Blight key passive hits enemies 10 times. All of your shadow damage is Shadow Blight damage, so it doesn't take very long for the key passive to hit it 10 times because that happens constantly. Bone Storm creates a barrier. This is your huge survivability. If you run into an elite pack of mobs, or you run into a boss like the Butcher, you pop Bone Storm, and it's going to basically grant you almost your entire life. So it essentially almost doubles your life. And barriers are just amazing in this game if you can have a build that runs them. Bone Storm and Blood Wave are also darkness skills and deal shadow damage. This is huge. So, lucky hit chance with shadow damage. Bone Storm is now considered doing darkness and shadow damage. See at the very bottom of the tooltip, it has a little icon and it says shadow damage. So even though it's doing a lot of regular damage, it's also doing shadow damage, and it goes around you and your golem. So it's doubling up. It also gives you golem like insane amounts of just free damage, right? So that is huge, is having this piece right here. Even though it says enemies damaged by Bone Storm take 466 shadow damage over 2 seconds, that's on top of its actual damage. So it's actually a lot. Like if you ever get into a bind and you pop it, you're going to be doing a crap ton of damage and going to be taking basically 0 damage. Like even if you're at like 10% health and you pop it, it's going to full barrier you almost instantly whenever you're in a group, and then you can pop 1 or 2 potions and top yourself off while still having a full barrier. So that is really, really good. This one, each time Shadow Blight deals damage to enemies, increases the next Shadow Blight damage by 30%, stacking 5 times. Well, 20 to 40%, depending on what roll you get when this drops. So for me, it's 150% increased damage of Shadow Blight that once it hits the 5th stack of it, it will just stay up until I've gone 10 seconds without damaging anything because all of my damage is essentially shadow damage. So this stays up almost permanently. And on the shield, I have Bone Prison, spawns a pool of Blight that does 95% bonus damage over 6 seconds. Also, to note, because we have this, Bone Prison will actually AoE grip stuff just like Blight does, because since it's spawning a pool of Blight, it does the AoE grip. So that's a really cool feature that a lot of people don't really talk about. Is you can, shoot out your Blight to grip them, and if it doesn't grip all of them, it doesn't matter. If you spawn your Bone Prison, it's going to grip them in anyways. So it's like a double grip. And generally your opener on large packs is to Blight into Bone Prison, and it will just group them all up nicely. And then because they're taking damage from Blight, taking damage from Bone Prison, it's going to start spawning corpses like crazy from Hued Flesh, and then you can spam Corpse Explosion and more Blights. Just be careful, because you can actually AoE grip them out of your Bone Prison with Blight's grip. So just be a little careful with that, because then you're just going to lose a little bit of damage because they're no longer going to be in that 95% increased Blight pool. All right, Book of the Dead real quick. We're going to sacrifice Reapers. This gives us more shadow damage. We're going to sacrifice Skeletal Mages because it makes vulnerable enemies take more damage. And we're going to keep Golem number 2 because Thorns going from 50% to, or 30% to 50%. Sorry about that. So that is this. Go into the abilities real quick. It does not matter what you take here. I generally choose, since I'm Shadow, I generally choose either Decompose or Reap, just because they're purple and I'm doing shadow damage, and that's just a personal preference, but it doesn't matter because this isn't even on the bar. So we're going to go Blight, and obviously we're going for 15% increased damage. Hued Flesh, because corpse generation from this. Now here's the thing. This, for luck, the lucky hit on this, the 12% and 24% versus bosses, right? So your Blight dot ticks, your Bone Prison Blight dot ticks, your Corpse Explosion dot ticks, your Bone Storm, and obviously it puts a shadow dot on them as well. All of those things can spawn corpses, right? When we come down here and we have the lucky hit chance from this, which can spawn, if you have Crippling Darkness down here, this is much, much, much lower because it's only off of darkness skills. And while we do have a lot of darkness skills that are doing a lot of damage, you have to have a lot of them rolling out for a chance for them to stun, which is why I only took one here. But let's go back up here. All right, so Corpse Explosion for the Miasma Puddle. We're taking, obviously, Bone Prison with Vulnerability, which is where we're going to get our Vulnerability, which is why we're sacrificing the Skeletal Mages. 3 into Grim Harvest, we need our Essence so we can spam more Blights. And 3 into Fueled by Death for the 9% increased damage. So we're using Decrepify because with the Abhorrent Decrepify, it gives you cooldown reduction. Now this is enemies hit while afflicted by Decrepify have a chance to reduce your cooldowns by 1 second. It's not off of darkness damage, it's off of any hit that they take. So the Explosion of Corpses, the Blight from your Bone Prison, it's basically the same as Hued Flesh, although not quite as often as Hued Flesh does, but it's very, very often. And if you're in a large pack of elites, you can actually, pop Decrepify on them and go into your rotation of Blight into Bone Prison, into spamming between Blight and Corpse Explosion, whether you have Essence or not. If you have Essence, you're going to use Blight. If you don't have Essence, Corpse Explosion to get your Blight back. And your Bone Prison and Bone Storm, so that's what we take down here, come off of cooldown extremely fast. Like, if there's a large enough group and the lucky hit procs are in your favor, you can actually finish Bone Storm's cooldown before it's finished actually circling around you. And I'm not taking the passive that makes it an 18-second Bone Storm. It's still only 10 seconds, so that's huge. I took Amplified Damage to get 9% increased damage to cursed enemies, because you should always have Decrepify up, because cooldown reduction is huge, because Bone Prison is massive damage and it just is a huge corpse generator, so you can make more Corpse Explosions. So you can throw out more Blights. It all kind of synergizes really, really well together. Down here, 1 point into Reaper's Pursuit, so you can activate Gloom. And then you're going to want Terror, because who doesn't want more damage? And Crippling Darkness, I put in 1. Whether you put in 1, 2, or 3, it remains a 15% chance. So if they get stunned for 1 second or 3 seconds, it's not that big of a deal since it doesn't happen very often at all. And I'd rather have the 9% damage from the cursed enemies here. So down here, we're going to obviously give our golem some more life and some more damage because he's going to taunt for us, and he's just giving out more thorns damage. But mostly, he's taunting for us, and that is actually huge because sometimes when you get massively surrounded, it's good to have that golem there to just taunt and take a bunch of those mobs off of you. And because they start hitting him, they're taking all of his thorns damage, which actually the amount of thorns that we have and we're giving him, he will any of the white mobs, any non-elites will essentially 2 or 3 shot themselves just hitting the golem. So it's really, really nice. Standalone because damage reduction, and it just makes you still a little more tanky. And then Memento Mori because we're sacrificing both the warriors and the skeletal mages anyway, so 60% increase on their effects. So that's huge. Bone Storm all the way through. I don't normally take the last point in Bone Storm because your dots cannot crit. However, Bone Storm itself can crit, and the Blight initial hit. So the initial hit from Blight actually does a chunk of damage, and that can crit. And while you have Bone Storm active, you get the increased critical strike chance by 20%. And then, of course, for the last one, we are taking Shadow Blight, and this obviously synergizes with the 2 pieces I have and increases your damage by a lot. On to the Paragon. So I'm literally 1 point away from getting this. But first board, I took Territorial because you are close to enemies. You are very, very, very close to enemies. They're literally stacked up on you all the time. You don't die very often. It's extremely rare that I die, even though I'm under-leveled in World Tier 4. But with higher Paragons, you're basically going to just become immortal with this build. With this glyph, it's going to increase your damage by, let's see, 21.4% damage to close enemies. That's for every 5 dexterity, you get that 4%, right? So we're getting 21% additional damage to close enemies. They're always stacked on you. You're literally AoE gripping them in to stack them, and then Bone Storming on top of them and spamming Corpse Explosion and Blights. So they're going to stay stacked on top of you. So you're just getting a constant 20+% increased damage. So I'm going to run more Nightmare Dungeons and increase this up because there is more dexterity. Where dexterity nodes? That's a 7 dexterity. We got more dexterity down here. So once this circle starts to expand larger and larger, we can take more dexterity and we can actually increase our damage even further for almost nothing because it's just a couple Paragon points. So this is actually a really good glyph for this build that I don't think a lot of people are taking because everyone's always looking for the shadow damage. So they're going for like Scourge because this gives you more shadow damage. And they're also going for, where is it? Darkness, because again, shadow damage. So, and don't get me wrong, those are both good. And up here, I'm planning to put Scourge in. So, I mean, just keep that in mind. I am putting Scourge in the very next point. And then, of course, I need to get the, where'd Scourge go? He's down here. I need to get more and more willpower to increase the damage, right? Once it hits level 15, the radius gets a little bigger. So I've been running Nightmare Dungeons to start leveling up this one. So he's at level 6 now. But when we come in here, we want Wither. So your second board is the Wither board. Rotate it around whichever way you feel works best for you. To be honest, it just flips the board anyway. So it's whatever way you feel works best for your own way. And you can choose whichever of these rare nodes that you like best. I personally grabbed Wither first. I flipped it this way. Originally Wither was over here, but I just liked it on the right for whatever reason. And then I grabbed this because I want more max life because I don't have a lot. I have 2,700 life. More damage reduction to anyone inflicted by shadow damage, which is great. So another 4 damage reduction if I can get another, like, what's that, 25 dexterity? So another 25 dexterity, and I'm going to get another 4% increase damage reduction, which is huge. Shadow damage plus damage over time. And then I grabbed these extra nodes. I could have probably skipped this one, but 5% shadow damage over time. That's what we're doing. We need more. I went up, grabbed this one for more shadow damage, more intelligence. And of course, my very next Paragon point is going right here. And then I have the choice of either go here for more shadow resistance, which I'm not really that concerned with. Pathing my way over here for more damage with Shadow and damage to elites, I'm probably going to grab this one, and then I'm going to make my way up out of the board and attach the next board. So that is the current Paragon, that is the skill tree, that is the gear, and I ran into this random dungeon, so let's go kill some mobs. Ah, there we go. There we go. So as you can see, you just kind of melt everything, right? And then you put up your Decrepify, and you can see the cooldowns coming up quite a bit faster. And it's a continuous synergy. Look at that Bone Storm cooldown just going crazy. Lunatics, let them start their cast and let them blow themselves up. So as you can see, as soon as you see a huge elite pack, just instantly spawn your Bone Storm, and then just start going through Corpse Explosions and Blights. Keep Decrepify up, you get the 9% increased damage, plus you get the cooldown reduction, which is the actual main reason we're taking it. So that is the build. I hope you guys enjoy it. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to leave a like, a subscribe, comment down below if you're enjoying this build. If not, let me know what you think could be better. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.